and show the video. No, go ahead and kill the rest of those. It's all right.
Everyone wants today to be better than yesterday, and tomorrow to be even better. This won't happen simply because we want it to. It requires effort and energy applied in the right places. If the consequences for the choices we made yesterday are good, then we may want to continue doing what we did yesterday. But if the consequences for the choices we made yesterday are not good, then we may want to change some of the feelings, attitudes, and the behaviors that led to those, so today can be a better day. If we keep doing what we did, we'll keep getting what we got. And another quote that applies to this week's lesson: systems trump intentions. Unless we put a plan in place and work the plan, we'll keep getting what we got. Even if yesterday was one of the best days of your life, we want today to be just as good, if not better, and for tomorrow to be even better. Everything we do as part of SLN here is learning to keep self under control so that we can allow God to guide our thoughts, plans, and actions. Today's lesson topic is another way we can accomplish this goal.
Okay, hold right there. Pause. Okay, I want to just touch on the two quotes he had there. He said, if you keep doing what you've always done, what's the rest of it? You'll always get what you've always got, right? So you keep doing that. So we have to break that cycle. Very similar to what we were talking about earlier, right? Okay, you have to do something different. Does that make sense? Okay. And then the next one is and we've talked about this in the past. System trumps intentions, I think is my thing. It's intentions. And what does that mean? Systems trump intentions. That means, I'll tell you what that means. How about that? I'll tell you what that means. You need to have a program, just like the first quote. If you keep doing the same thing you've always done, you're going to get what you always got. So you have to set up a program, habits, systems to help you to make a change. Because whatever you set up in your life, okay, whatever system you set up, that's what you're going to get out of it. Does that make sense? So you need system. If you just have intention saying, I want to do better, I wish I could do better, maybe I could do better, those are all just intentions, or maybe we can say hopes, okay, light hopes. And what we need to do is use the tools of a system, okay, a program, maybe like steps, okay, coming to a meeting, calling my sponsor, getting up in the morning and reading a devotional, reading my step guide, praying, some sort of healthy system to help you to get better. Because if you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always... Okay, Kate.
The acronym HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, and tired. Each one of these 4 physical and emotional conditions, if not taken care of, leaves an individual vulnerable to make bad choices, to follow the path of least resistance. For the addict, this can lead to relapse. For the codependent, this can lead to efforts at control. For the angry, this can lead to frustration and rage. For the survivor of abuse and neglect, this can lead to bad relationship choices. And for every one of us, this can lead to falling back into old beliefs and patterns of behavior that prevent us from making the right choices. When we're not focused on making the right choices, we follow the path of least resistance. Napoleon Hill said the path of least resistance is what makes all rivers and some men crooked. The acronym HALT is helpful for everyone because we will sometimes feel We'll spend some more time talking about each of these four conditions, the letters of the acronym in more detail, in order for you to get the most out of this self-care tool.
Okay, Kate.
The first letter of the
I know it was going a little quick, but it's on your paperwork. I know it's dark, but and that is that for the addict, if we don't deal with our emotions and our physical issues, those are signals that signal us, that tells us that we need to take care of our life, and that's the reason why we need to set up these systems. Does that make sense? Okay, so we have to. We have to address them, and if you don't, here's the problem. We become vulnerable to all those pressures and circumstances that have been beaten on you from the past. Relapse. And for the addict, you have the relapse, right? Why? Why? Because for the addict, his system that he developed was to use, or for her to use, whichever the case may be. Correct? For the codependent, that it leads to efforts of controlling. In other words, going to control things. And we've talked about that. And the people that have control issues, they don't like to talk about that, but that's one of the things. And then for the for those that have anger issues, then it leads to more frustration and rage, and then it just spirals out of control. Correct? And for the rest of us, if we didn't get you on those, for the rest of us, that it leads us back into those old behaviors and patterns that have inflicted us, and if we don't make healthy or right choices, then we'll just go back and do what we've always done. And then if we do what we've always done, then we're going to what? Get what we've always got. Okay. And I like this Napoleon Hill quote here. And it says, and the path of least resistance is what makes all rivers and some men or women crooked. I thought that was pretty interesting quote there, and the fact of it is that we have to, and that goes back to what I talked about in the reversing the desire, that tool of reversal of desire, that we have to, if we stay on the path of least resistance, and that's avoiding pain or seeking pleasure, then we're going to end up like that crooked river. Correct? All right. Okay, Kate. Thanks.
The H.A.L.T principle is H for hunger. When we think about the word hunger, we often get visions of starving children, whether they're from Africa or our own community. Hunger describes the most obvious physical condition of a lack of food. We all know how important it is to have regular, nutritional meals, preferably small in size and frequent in number. And most people know what the most important meal of the day is, yet few of us actually eat it. Our bodies require nutrition to function. If we don't take in the necessary vitamins and nutrients through our diet, we will not be able to function properly, and all kinds of bad stuff will begin to happen. Hunger isn't just about food. Hunger can also point towards emotional needs, the hunger for attention, for comfort, for understanding, for companionship. Understanding our human need for attention is crucial to controlling our behaviors, specifically our obsessive and compulsive behaviors. Some researchers have suggested that the majority of what we do on a daily basis is really attention-getting behavior, masked as something else, like talking to a store clerk about a product or a friend about random things. Attention is a core need that everyone has and most of us struggle with. The need for attention begins in infancy and continues until we leave this earth.
Okay,
Without
Kate.
nutrients,
Oh,
living
sorry.
things
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
will die, and the human need for attention is no different. We need it. We can't thrive without it. This was shown by a horrific experiment in the Middle Ages by the German Emperor Frederick II. He had newborn babies removed from their parents and cared for by nurses who fed and cleansed them, but were under strict instructions not to talk, touch, or give them any attention whatsoever, in an attempt to satisfy the emperor's curiosity as to what language the children would speak if they didn't hear their native tongue. The experiment was never resolved. All the babies died from a lack of attention before reaching the age when they can talk. Getting too much attention won't kill you, but it can have bad effects because it makes you inefficient, so we need to make sure our attention needs are met in a healthy balance. To achieve this healthy balance, it's important that we have others in our lives that can help guide us, love us, and hold us accountable. This can include accountability partners, mentors, friends, and family members. Just like we need grocery stores to take care of our physical hunger, we need the community of like-minded people to fill our emotional needs. Therefore, the solution to emotional hunger is community, and this is accomplished through our small groups here. In the second letter of the H.A.L.T. principle.
Okay, Kate. Thank you. All right, so we need love. That is a biological human need. He used the word attention, but it's love and belonging. Okay, if we use Maslow's terminology, and that's a human need, a survival need, that we need to do that. And I touched on the king last week, talking about that the experiment that he had, and this was in the the king died in 1250, I believe. That all the babies died because they had the failure to survive, because they weren't touched, they weren't loved, they weren't spoken to, and so they didn't grow. And so those are things that we need. And I like his terminology. Just like the grocery store is there to help us to meet our physical needs, because we do have physical needs. We need proper nutrition, correct? All right. Twinkies and Kool-Aid is not necessarily the best thing, or no, not really. And I mean, you can live on that for a little while, but it's going to have an effect on you, right? Correct. All right. Emotionally, we have needs also, and we can live a while by being in the cave, or being disconnected, or trying to live all alone. But you know what? What is one of the biggest ways that they torture or punish people in prison? Isolation. Okay. Solitary confinement. Okay. Restricting you from human contact. Now, that doesn't sound that bad until you've experienced that. Now, I personally have not experienced that, but that's what they do, right? Because it has an effect on them, that because of that isolation. Does that make sense? That's right. You're closed in. If you lived in the wilderness, you at least have other stimulation. There's animals, trees, and there's other things that's going on there, and that's a whole different science issue. What we get from nature just by being in nature, how it affects us. But the point here is that we need connection. Babies will die if they don't have the connection. We need connection, even though we say, I don't need it, or I have had so bad of an experience, then I don't want it anymore. Because we've had some of that too, right? Yes. And that would be normal. But the fact of it is it is we have to learn to make healthy choices in picking those relationships, healthy groups, healthy people, healthy relationships.
You know, just like you said, you know, we can live off of Twinkies and Kool-Aid for a little bit, but it's going to have an effect on you. If you're having a relationship with Twinkie and Kool-Aid, it's going to have an effect on you.
That's right.
You know, so.
If we continue to do what we've always done, we're going to get what we always got, okay? If we keep, and if we go into the relationships, if we keep choosing the same relationships that we've had in the past, you know, I talked with, many years ago, I talked with a lady that had been married or involved in relationships, cohabitation situations. It was in a divorce recovery class I was doing 5 or 6 times. And she said, and it's a common story, she said, but I kept marrying the same guy every time, just with a different name. That's it. And so what we have to do is we have to go what that other statement was. We have to set up systems instead of just good intentions. All right? We have to set up healthy systems to help us. Does that make sense? Yep. And a healthy system here in relationships is not no relationships, but at least we need to start with one, okay? Maybe one. How about that? Was that easier? Maybe one? Start with one, okay? And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We can work on it, right? Because as we do that, then the idea is that we learn what we need to learn, and then we develop. I'm going to deviate here for a second. I watched a movie that I've been wanting to watch for a long time, and it took me 3 sessions to get it finished, and it was called Beautiful Mind by it was John Nash, the Professor John Nash, and at the very end of the movie, he came back to one of his professor friends, and he wanted to come back to the university and just be there. He said, because I think it will be good for me to be with people. Because he lived most of his life trying to be separated from people, and it didn't work out very well. Okay? Even though he had gotten a Nobel Prize, okay, and had a big had these accolades, but so he started hanging out. And yes, he had some bad experiences even when he was hanging out, but he got better piece by piece until he was even able to teach a class again. Anyway, it was just a, because everything I do and everything I look at and everything I study and everything I read, I try to associate it and try to get patterns out of it, how I can help people in recovery. Does that make sense? Why? Because I want to help you, and I want to help anybody in recovery. So, anyway, I think that covers that. Let's go. Let's talk about anger, okay? Are you ready?
For anger. Anger is a little bit more complex, and the solution a bit more challenging for some people. Here's the good news. There's nothing wrong with feeling anger. The bad news? Most of us have never learned how to express anger constructively. The way we express our anger is often in destructive forms. We either turn anger inward against ourselves or outward against others. Anger can range from criticizing and belittling to name-calling and physical violence. Anger can also be like a repeated tape loop playing in our head. This is called resentment. The Bible is literally full of scripture concerning anger issues. Many of us are quick to recognize anger issues in others, but slow to diagnose the problem in our lives. How do you know when anger is beginning to control your choices, your emotions, and leading you down a path you don't need to go? For most of us, we simply need to ask ourselves, how many times we've heard people ask us about our mood or our attitude? dismiss these comments without paying much attention. If the people we know are bringing this up in our lives, then maybe there's a problem that needs to be addressed. Proverbs 14:17 says, "A quick-tempered man does foolish things, and a crafty man is hated." In Proverbs 15:1, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." And James 1:19 through 20 says, "My dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. For a man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires." Here's something to try. Both the Bible and the Big Book of A.A. suggests that a person with resentment towards someone should pray for that person. Imagine for a moment that all the good things in life that we want for ourselves to be given to that other person. My experience personally, and through ministry experience, has been that anybody who subjects themselves to this discipline will eventually reap the benefit of feeling free from the incessant thoughts about the individual involved, and an unforeseen resolution to the conflict usually emerges. Here's a few ideas to help you deal with anger. First, take a time out, during which you practice breathing exercises. Taking a moment to focus on breathing can really help you interrupt the anger cycle and help you regain control of your emotions. The breathing exercises is simply breathing in for a 10 count through your nose and breathing out through your mouth for a 10 count. Long, slow, deep breaths. Another thing, some people actually need to do some physical activity, such as walking, running, stomping, or screaming, if you have the privacy to do so, to help you discharge the tension running through your body, the neurochemicals that were dumped in there, cortisol, epinephrine, adrenaline, to use those up. And the third, look for the underlying cause of your anger. Anger is always about an unmet or misguided expectation or some form of powerlessness. As we just mentioned, we can begin the process of working through anger by identifying the underlying causes. We need to be willing to accept responsibility for our FAB, our feelings, attitudes, and behaviors, and then be willing to negotiate or compromise to resolve issues. Sometimes the relationship dynamic that provoked the anger is so destructive that we need to distance ourselves for a while, maybe even for good. If you have difficulty with guiding yourself towards a timeout, self-reflection, and resolving the issue, you may need to discuss it in detail with your small group or get counseling help. Sometimes anger literally controls our lives. The anger could be connected to a trauma from our past, family issues, or a neurochemical problem. Whatever the cause, don't allow it to continue causing problems in your life and relationships. Seek help. And the next letter in the HALT principle is L.
Okay.
For lonely.
All right. And you've got most of those, you got those scriptures on the paperwork there. I know you can't see them that it's dark, but did anybody have any big ideas over anger that he discussed? Any thoughts? Okay. Well, let's see here. Of course, all those scriptures were good, but one that we have talked about, I think we talked about all of those, but one that we talked about quite a bit a couple of years ago, lengthily, is James 1:19 through 20, and particularly the last part of that, and that is, for a man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. And what does that mean? Oftentimes we use anger to try to make things happen, and man's anger doesn't produce God's righteousness. Does that make sense? All right. And so that's very interesting. And so the AA and as 12 steps and the Bible, the church talks about that we need to pray, and particularly one of the directives is pray for those that have hurt you or harmed you or despitefully used you. Does that make? right? Pray for your enemies, which is a very interesting terminology. And so, and the fact of it is, when we actually do pray for those folks, we actually change. And then I think that as we change, that affects them, right? Have you experienced some of that? You ought to try that and see. Okay. Right. And we need to look at, why are we acting out? Why do we have this feeling? Why do we believe what we believe? Is that we're believing? Is it the truth? Is it really the truth? Okay, those are two different questions in case you didn't know. Is it the truth, or is it really the truth? And if you say, is it absolutely the truth? And that's a third question, okay? And do what? That is true. And so what we need to do is take a look at that. And when we can kind of create a crack in our anger or our thought or our irrational belief, then we can start to begin to move it around. Does that make sense? I thought, it seems like maybe I've heard this before, the FAB, but I went on and put the verbiage right underneath it: feelings, attitudes, and behaviors, just in case you hear that anywhere else. So that's probably in their system of teaching that they use that a lot. And so, comments? Is this any good for you so far? All right. 2 thumbs up. All right. Okay, Kate.
This means isolating yourself. It's similar to hunger in that the solution is the same: community. However, loneliness points to the difficulty of reaching out. Remember what we talked about regarding hunger. When we don't find ways to meet our emotional hunger needs, we tend to isolate ourselves from the very thing we need most: people. The loneliness we feel can have several causes. We could have used isolation as a childhood survival tool. Could be from emotional or clinical depression. Could be from relationship fears. See, if loneliness is either a constant or frequent companion of yours, and you don't seem to be able to come out of it on your own, you may need to discuss the issue in detail with your small group again, or seek counseling help to identify the underlying causes and develop a treatment or wellness plan. In Genesis 2:18, the Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make him a suitable helper." And in 1 Corinthians 12:21, the eye cannot say to the hand, "I don't need you," and the head cannot say to the feet, "I don't need you." This scripture isn't talking about lopping off body parts. It is directly linked to the preceding paragraphs. The body, the church, is made up of many parts. We all have different skills and personalities. It's difficult to get along with others at times. If we choose to focus on giving rather than getting, amazing things will begin to happen in our lives. The simple fact is, we are the only person that can fix this in our lives.
Yes.
We need to take some risks by beginning new
Yes.
friendships and relationships, appropriate relationships. Remember, there is one thing you can always count on concerning people: they will let you down. Make friends anyway. And the last letter of the H.A.L.T principle is T for tired. Many people believe that getting too little sleep is just a part of the world we live in today. That in order to stay up on technology, electronic relationships, our careers, and family events are issues, we need to wake up earlier or go to sleep later. For those of us that struggle with depression or anxiety, our restful sleep patterns are the first thing to suffer. We all have a tendency to ignore tiredness at times. Several years ago, I saw a video of an experiment in which volunteers were subjected to either alcohol intake or sleep deprivation. The reality is that physical tiredness may be the cause of as many traffic accidents as alcohol consumption. It's a serious condition that endangers our well-being as well as that of others. The solution, of course, is napping or sleeping. If you've been experiencing difficulty sleeping at night, begin taking steps today to resolve the problem. The first form of tiredness that we were talking about comes from a lack of sleep. The other form of tiredness comes from taking on too much, being overloaded and overwhelmed, or as you can see in this picture, overplaying. How can we deal with being tired? Well, the only solution I'm aware of is to cut back where you can and follow some of the basic guidelines. First, schedule periods of rest. This can include anything from taking a nap to going on a vacation. And second, make sure you're getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep every day. Less than 2% of people can get by on less than 7 hours, yet far more try to function at that level. And the next step is to look for the underlying cause of your tiredness. Being tired may not always be related to the amount of sleep you're getting. Low iron levels are among a variety of other problems in your body that can cause you to feel constantly tired. Consider this question. Why did God establish the Sabbath? In Genesis 2, 2 through 3, we read, "By the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating all that he had done." Do you think God needed to rest on the seventh day? Now, God knew we'd busy ourselves and ignore our bodies and our need for rest and rejuvenation. Hence, the Sabbath. Not only would we do physical harm to ourselves without rest, our relationship with him would diminish due to our busyness. Eve Van Cotter, a researcher at the University of Chicago, said, "Lack of sleep disrupts every physiological function of the body, and we have nothing in our biology that allows us to adapt to this behavior." Physiologic studies suggest that a sleep deficit may put the body into a state of high alert, increasing the production of stress hormones, epinephrine, cortisol, adrenaline, and norepinephrine, the same things that happen with anger. These drive up blood pressure and are a major risk factor for heart attacks, strokes, and contribute to diabetes. Tonight we've been talking about the HALT principle. I have a question for you. How could your life improve if you would simply halt what you're doing each day, or several times each day, and take a minute or so to reflect on each aspect of this acronym, how we allow hunger, anger, loneliness, and tiredness to negatively impact our lives? The rewards for doing so can literally save your life. If we could simply slow down and learn how to insert pauses into our lives so we can be more proactive rather than reactive, and to burn this principle into the front of our brains and learn how to take care of ourselves physically and emotionally before sickness or trauma forces a change, life could be very different. Unfortunately, most of us will wait until we crash and burn. The purpose of tonight's lesson is to take the time now to learn this principle, to learn to start inserting these pauses now so we can become more proactive rather than reactive in life. Learn the HALT principle and start living better now. If we continue to allow hunger, anger, loneliness, or tiredness dictate our choices, we'll spend more time trying to pick up the pieces and repair the damage than we do living and enjoying life. All right, we're headed off to small groups right now. Have a great week, and remember,
Miracle, would you turn the lights on, please? So what do you think? Good information?
Yep.
Now, we're not going to have time to go into the other paperwork we had there. We will put that somewhere. We got the party next week, so we won't be doing it then. We'll put it down the road. Now, on the week after the party, we're going to be having open mic night. So if you have something you want to share, we'll be having that time that week, which would be the 29th, I believe. I think that is. So anyway, and so that will be going on that night. So we won't be doing the halt that night, but probably the first of the year. I'm assuming. So anyway, to wrap up here, some of the things I didn't cover on anger was the 3 steps, and one of them was that we needed to take a time out and practice deep breathing. Do you realize that is really a key to altering your mood? Changing your mood is by breathing deeply, slowing down, thinking about your breath. Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar says we ought to take 3 deep breaths at every stoplight that we stop at. It says when you're in line at the store or at Walmart, I don't know if he said Walmart, but I'm going to throw Walmart in there. He says you need to first, before you do anything while you're in line, is to breathe. 3 deep breaths. I particularly like to breathe what they call box breathe, and they usually say do it to the count of 4, but I like to do it to the count of 8 because it pushes me a little more. And what that is you inhale to the count of 8, you hold to the count of 8, you exhale to the count of 8, and then you hold to the count of 8. And what that does, that causes your body to breathe and get oxygen in. You're thinking about what you're doing, and you're able to slow your heart rate down, and you're getting oxygenated. Okay? So breathe. That was one of the ways to deal with anger. Remember? Breathe. It says give yourself a timeout and breathe. Have you ever given yourself a timeout? Okay, good. And give yourself a timeout and breathe, okay? Second one is to do something physical, take a walk, go for a run, do something physical, okay? To work out the chemicals that have flooded your body, okay?
And to clarify, something physical is not fighting.
Fighting, yes, yes. In the film, if you remember, it said if you were by yourself, do certain things that if you're by yourself, so you're not around. He was talking about hitting a pillow, things like that. I don't particularly like to encourage people to hit pillows, but if you're by yourself, then that's one thing. Trouble is, people like to hit walls and things like that, right? And that's not good. It just ends up costing money to somebody, and it's usually the landlord. Yeah. So, but do something physical in the sense of go for a walk, go for a jog, go for a run, do push-ups, jumping jacks. Here's one: planking. Have you ever done any planking? That looks real simple. You do that for a little while, and that they say that is an overall body exercise. Okay. Just try it. Just try it for 1 minute. See how you do. Okay. All right. But anything to burn up that energy, that chemical that's inside of you. And the third thing was to take a look at why you have this anger. What's the cause? Okay. So, all right. And any questions? Well, what about in the loneliness where he talked about people going to see? There's only one thing you can always count on is that people will let you down, right? People will let you down, and having unreal expectations about other people's performance is actually, if you have unreal expectations, that's your expectations, right? And so, but people will let us down. So we have to be ready to manage our own emotions, right? Because people are flawed, okay, and it's going to happen. Now, I know you will never let anybody down, but that was a joke. Sarcasm. Okay. And so then lonely, again, we need to make those connections. Okay? And then, of course, tired. We need to take care of ourselves because if we run ourselves ragged, if we burn the candle at both ends, then all that's left is smoke, right? And even though, again, I told you last week I'm not very good at this, but I remember going to a meeting in St. Louis one time, and the guy that was teaching, he said, I don't want to rust out, I want to burn out. And he was trying to motivate us. But I decided that if I wanted to help people for as long as I was going to be here, and I want to do that as long as I can, so that I don't want to burn the candle at both ends, even though I have a tendency to maybe do some of that. But I try to address that. I'm better than I used to be, not as good as I'm going to be. How about that? Okay? All right. So we need to address the tiredness. And I did look at my, I got a Fitbit, and I did look at my average time the other day, and I did see that I was getting between 6 and 7 hours on average. So that's not too bad. So, questions? Did you learn anything? What'd you learn?
During the week, I take a break for a minute. I have to. Sometimes I get overloaded. I need to just walk into another room or something.
That's right. You know, and see, and that is a skill, that is a tool, and that is to change your location, change your surroundings, change what's going on there, and that right there affects us neurologically that we're not even aware of, but it's a good strategy. Go walk outside, take 3 deep breaths, do it to the count of 8, do some box breathing, anything that works for you. Find out what works, and then keep working it. Okay?
I learned, for me, it was looking at Hungary in a whole different, I've always thought of Hungary as a physical, the halts. I've learned, learned the halts for a long, long time in my life. But I've always looked at Hungary as a physical state of being, and to look at it now from an emotional state of being, it was really enlightening to me. So I enjoyed that part.
Many years ago, someone pointed out, asked me a question. He says, have you ever just walked to you just had eaten, but you walked to the refrigerator try to eat something? And the question is, what we're really looking for may not be physical food, but it may be something else, emotional, spiritual food. And that's one of the ways we soothe ourselves, most of us, is with food. Okay? I heard something the other day that crunchy food, just chewing on stuff that is crunchy, it affects us in a positive way. But we got to be careful what we do and realize why we're doing it. Because if we keep doing what we've always done, then we're going to get what we've always got. May not be good English, but you kind of remember it, right? Ain't that right?
The acronym HALT in any of these situations is the point: stop, take care of whatever, hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Yes.
And
Look at it. Stop and look at it.
stop.
It's a signal.
Yeah.
Okay, something's going on, physical or emotional. So look at it. We're going to go over some more of it. We'll read through the sheet. So anyway, all right. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you his peace. Amen? And make healthy choices.